After covering years worth of anime on Adult Swim, there's one aspect of Adult Swim shows I wanted to expand upon, both in and outside the realm of anime: the shows they revived. Now this is a multi-layered thought, but basically, Adult Swim gets the rights to air reruns of an animated program, and thanks to the attention they gave that show, or even their own funding, that show gets more episodes or seasons, sometimes on the network, sometimes on another channel. Adult Swim breathes new life into these shows, and I want to talk about them. As long as these shows were acquired by Adult Swim after they were cancelled or ended, and later got newly broadcast episodes, either on or off Adult Swim, anime or Western animation, they're eligible for this list. Even if it was initially something like a movie or started on its connected station, Cartoon Network, it counts as a revival to me. However, there's also another category of revival that I'm counting. If a show was cancelled before it could finish its run, where it had episodes that were produced but unaired, that counts to me too. So even if these already finished episodes were just in the vault and Adult Swim aired them for the first time because they could, I'll count that as a revival since they were still letting content that was written off see the light of day. And joining me, because no Adult Swim video would be complete without her, is my sleepy co-host, Judgment Meter.
That's me, because I support Adult Swim and things that they like and save.
Now, let's uncover the top 10 series revived by Adult Swim. Number 10, Baby Blues. Here's the first example of Adult Swim airing episodes of a cancelled series, since its original network did not want them. Baby Blues is really just a generic cynical family sitcom, and in terms of plots, it doesn't seem like anything special to me. But the more I learn about its troubled production, the more I'm intrigued. It's about a husband and wife, Daryl and Wanda, living in suburbia with their newborn. They have crass neighbors with annoying children, and there's a few other characters that they have dysfunctional relationships with. The plot lines are not groundbreaking, but occasionally they'll have a good joke that gets me, like when the husband imagines his wife living a lavish lifestyle after he passes, and she uses his cremation urn as an ashtray. So this show is based on a newspaper comic strip of the same name, and it's a lot more wholesome. Nothing to write home about, but it's got cute jokes about raising kids. Apparently, the WB network, which eventually became the CW, wanted to make their own animated sitcom after seeing the success of The Simpsons and King of the Hill, so they got the rights to use Baby Blues. However, they changed it to be more crude and lewd, like maybe a Married with Children level of humor. They apparently did not want to see families getting along until the resolution of an episode. In fact, besides the main family, all other notable characters in the sitcom were not from the comics. They just made up a bunch of original characters. Like the neighbor family, the Bittermans, were a crasser family that got about as much attention as the main family. And it's not like the creators of the comic strip were preventing them from using anyone else. They apparently were given little creative control, and network executives just felt like this was the direction audiences wanted to see. They even tried renaming the series Bluesville before that got shut down. This begs the question, why bother making a sitcom based on an existing property if you're just gonna keep making other characters for it instead? Just make a new series. But we all know the answer was because Baby Blues was an established name, even if it was not the most noteworthy comic strip to use. To further its production woes, the Christmas episode was meant to be the pilot and air around Christmas 1998, but because the rest of the season wasn't ready yet, they just never aired it and held the series premiere a year and a half until July 2000, with no Christmas episode to be seen. It ran for 5 weeks with 2 new episodes per week for the first 3 weeks, and then WB promised it would be back later, but they really just cancelled it, meaning it was dead by August 2000, with 5 unaired episodes left in the first season. Then Adult Swim was like, we'll take that, and about a year and a half later, in January 2002, Adult Swim aired the cancelled episodes on a weekly basis on Sunday nights. In fact, since the series had no fixed continuity, they started with episode 9, the first of the cancelled episodes, and got those out of the way, including the cancelled Christmas episode, which was labeled as a prequel episode since it chronologically takes place before any other episode in the series. So that That's how the first season of Baby Blues completed its run. Adult Swim would randomly swap it in and out of the lineup for about a decade, just seeing if new audiences liked it and as block filler. I know I first caught it on one of those rerun cycles like in 2005 or 6, so I was one of those audiences. Mostly because I liked that the theme song was It's All Been Done by the Bare Naked Ladies, which was my favorite song by them, so the theme song did its job of getting my attention.
Are they a real family, or they're just playing a family on a sitcom?
Don't think too hard about the visuals of the theme song. They're just doing a meta joke that the cartoon characters are studio actors for the show. It's like how the Brack Show acts like they're actors in all the commercials.
Brack. I love Brack.
You also might have noticed I've been calling these episodes the first season, despite them being the only episodes. That's because apparently a second full season was produced, it was nearly ready, and then it was never aired. This is because the series was considered a tax write-off since they canceled it, so legally, WB could not let Adult Swim show the second season. They were allowed to do anything with season 1, but season 2, nope, can't touch it. I was never interested in seeing more episodes of this sitcom, but just knowing that I can't have it makes me want it. Imagine new episodes of Baby Blues that are actually 25 years old. Number 9, The Big O. The Big O was not initially an Adult Swim show. It was on the Toonami block back when it was during the daytime on Cartoon Network in 2001. It was on my list about iconic Toonami anime where I touched upon its Adult Swim run, so let's summarize what we said there and expand upon the Adult Swim part. The series is about Roger Smith, a negotiator for Paradine City, the city where weird creatures were always invading due to its mysterious history. His work as a negotiator is on the ground with potential witnesses and criminals, but he also takes part in the giant enemies that attack the city, sometimes related to his negotiations, by calling in his giant robot, the Big O. And the Big O is just an awesome giant mech. He's got missiles and lasers, but he also has the old-fashioned giant robot fist. Roger's joined by the android Dorothy, who acts as his assistant, and his butler Norman, who's his backup and protects the house if anything comes that way. My favorite sequence in the whole series is when Norman has to pick up Roger's dry cleaning as the city's crumbling by driving his motorcycle through the cleaner's building while rescuing the employee inside.
Norman is his best friend, because he doesn't know how to make friends. Or have time for friends. But Norman is the only one who will put up with him.
And for Dorothy, I just love whenever she fights, since she has a very unassuming appearance but can fight back simply based on how durable her robot body is. Despite being a wealthy shut-in, Roger is still a likable guy. He'll always work with Norman if he can, he's never above manual labor, and he's always spouting his rules to live by, like valuing the elderly, only using force as a last resort, or if someone lacks courtesy and sincerity, he asks them to leave. So he's a good guy, but appears cold since he's not emotionally open.
I love Dorothy, and Dorothy loves Roger, and Roger doesn't get it. Roger has a job to do. He's busy fighting monsters.
And negotiating.
And negotiating.
I don't even think it's because of his job. I just think it's because of himself.
No, he's not good at dealing with or showing emotions. The android is better at it.
I also praised it in previous videos, but this is an awesome art style. It modernizes a 1960s anime style. Toonami ran it on weekdays starting in April 2001, and it appeared to be a hit, getting multiple rerun cycles and appearing on their midnight run block. The only issue is, this series was 13 episodes, so there wasn't much to show. It was supposed to be a 26-episode series, but after low viewership in Japan, they cut it in half and canceled the rest. The people over at Cartoon Network still liked it enough to give it a shot, and thanks to its success internationally, Cartoon Network was able to strike a deal with its Japanese animation studio Sunrise and the production company Bandai Visual. They co-produced the final 13 episodes, however, the network did not put it on Toonami. It instead was put on the Adult Swim lineup when Season 2 premiered 2 years later in August 2003. Not sure why they didn't want Season 2 on Toonami, but since Season 1 had a bit of censorship for daytime daytime TV, it may just be that they wanted to avoid cutting anything, so Adult Swim was the new home for Big O. It even showed season 1 uncut in the weeks leading up to the second season premiering to properly make the Big O an Adult Swim show. Same writers and voice cast as the first season, so it was more of the same in terms of episode structure. Roger goes on a negotiation case, the characters interact, a big monster attacks, and then we get a cool fight sequence. But since this was going to be the end of the series, there was a continuous plot involving a villain introduced in the first season who didn't do much at the time, named Alex Rosewater. We learn he wants to take control of the giant beasts that attack the city because ultimate power and such. There's also more cliffhangers this season, involving things like problems with the robot, and the series does wrap up the story by the end. Looking at the series as a whole, my favorite episodes do tend to be from season 1, but I wouldn't say season 2 is bad, it's still very good. I just think I like the Monster of the Day format for season 1 better. The animation is also different for season 2, but not majorly different. It's mainly brighter, with the first season being produced in the late 90s, and this season being produced in like 2001 or 2, you do feel that we were in that transitionary period between the end of cell animation and the prominence of digital inking rising. And that's not a bad thing. The animation still looks great in season 2, but I do prefer the more washed out colors of season 1.
So much more pointy. Open a can with that chiseled chin.
The series then reran on Adult Swim for many years after that, and it even made its Toonami debut uncut in 2013, after Adult Swim revived the Toonami block. I'm glad that Cartoon Network was able to influence a dead anime getting more episodes, the first of a few times, and that Adult Swim made sure we got our season 2 fix of Big O with no cuts. Number 8. Mission Hill. Mission Hill has gotten a bit of a cult following over the years since it was ahead of its time, it seems. It's about an aspiring cartoonist named Andy who is living in a loft with his friends and brother after college and is trying to get out of that dead-end job or unemployment slump. It covers some of those topics you'd find fresh into adulthood, so I appreciate the existential thoughts, like the episode about Andy's fear of not advancing in the workforce in his 20s. I also like the deadpan tone of Andy's friend Jim. It makes the jokes of his bad advice hit funnier. The series was created by Bill Oakley and Josh Weinstein, who were the showrunners of The Simpsons for seasons 7 and 8, generally considered to be the last of the golden age seasons of The Simpsons, so that might explain why this humor resonates with so many Mission Hill viewers. I also want to shout out the art style. Something about it is appealing and I can't quite put my finger on what it is. I love the colors, especially when the characters are in the evening or in the dark. This series unfortunately suffered the same fate as Baby Blues in terms of broadcasting, where it was planned as an animated series for the WB in 1999, aired a few episodes at the end of '99, and then more consistently ran for a few weeks in June or July 2000 before being cancelled at the end of July. 13 episodes were produced, but only 6 aired on the WB, and out of production order, so you know what that means. A year and a half later, in May 2002, Adult Swim decided to run Mission Hill in order of production, so the last 7 episodes were released from the grave as brand new content for Adult Swim. Then it became a staple of random Sunday night lineups for Adult Swim when they wanted it for rerun cycles. Unlike Baby Blues, Mission Hill had no seasons restricted, but it did have 5 episodes that never finished production, likely due to WB's cancellation, so there is unseen content, but it was never ready for airing. Oakley said the reason Mission Hill fell flat initially was because the WB purchased the rights to the show in 1998, but between then and the production of the season, shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Dawson's Creek, and Charmed became so popular on the network that the executives changed their demographic to be more of that teen drama action appeal, so Mission Hill fell outside of their plans. By the time it was ready, the WB sent it out to die, which it did since the ratings were poor. Overall, Mission Hill might have had the gas to last a few seasons if it was on a network that took care of it from the start, but at least Adult Swim treated the episodes they had with respect. Number 7. Fooly Cooly. Fooly Cooly, spelled FLCL, was a 6-episode OVA that Adult Swim ran over and over for years because they loved it so much, and I'm glad they did. I gave it a full entry on my iconic Adult Swim anime list, so I don't want to repeat everything I said there, but in summary, it was a perfect storm of a writer, animators, and studio Gainax in its prime coming coming together at the right time to make a work of art. It has a crazy plot that you watch unfold that should make sense at the end if you pay close attention, along with having a killer soundtrack that works with the animators, and the animation itself is stunning and ever-changing. Some animators just come in to bring a scene to life, and it looks completely unique from the rest of the episodes. They try so many ambitious animation techniques, and they work. As mentioned, I gave it a full breakdown on another list, so check that one out if you want something more detailed about my thoughts on the original series, since we're mostly here to talk about the revival by Adult Swim. With Adult Swim loving Fooly Cooly so much, as proclaimed by them as their favorite anime during their bumpers, they sought out to make more. They got the rights and teamed up with Production IG, a different animation studio from the original, but a frequent collaborator with Adult Swim. It was announced in 2017 that new Fooly Cooly was coming to Adult Swim soon, and the reaction was cool, I guess. People were excited to see more of an anime that was beloved for all of its creative leaps and bounds, but since the anime had a conclusion that was not really open-ended, no one expected or was asking for more. That being said, no one was complaining that there was going to be more, we just didn't know what else could be done to feel in line with the original. 2 seasons were announced, each of which would be 6 episodes with new protagonists each season, with the common thread being the main chaos coordinator from the original, Haruko, the person responsible for opening robot portals in people's heads and having some devious plan. Going with the music theme, each season was named after a different type of rock music, progressive for season 2 and alternative for 3. Progressive came out in June 2018 on Adult Swim's Toonami block, and it was okay. A big issue with Progressive, and frankly the rest of the Fooly Cooly follow-ups, was it had no one major from the main team of the original. It felt like it was trying to be in the spirit of the original, but some of it just ended up referencing the original in some way, and it was kinda hollow. The main character is a high schooler named Hidomi, who also gets a robot portal opened in her head after she's hit by a vehicle. A mysterious organization is tracking Haruko again. Kanti, the main robot guy from the original, is around but not really doing much, and Haruko warns the characters that they'll overflow, which is something the character Mamimi did in the original when she has a mental breakdown, but she was not directly affected by Haruko, so it just felt like they were bringing back a random concept from the original so they can make it seem like that it was retroactively foreshadowing.
I'm going to overflow.
The animation also tries to change between episodes like the original, but it doesn't quite have that same spark as the original. I appreciate the work that went into some of the thicker outlines when they do change it. It was noticeable, but it feels like they were just doing it because they had to, and not because it was a natural progression like the original 6 episodes. There's also this organization watching things go down that's trying to be like the interstellar investigators from the original, but they're vague for the sake of being vague. I really want to know more about them. Like, cool, there's this guy named Eye Patch, yeah. And then the other one's the son of the eyebrows guy from season 1, but he doesn't do anything related to how the original guy acted.
It was like a different generation watched the original and then wrote a fanfic about it, and then this is what we got.
Despite how critical we're being, I kind of enjoy Progressive when I view it as a tribute to the original. It had big shoes to fill, and without the lightning in a bottle that was the original, there was no way it would live up to its predecessor, and you just have to accept that. So I liked the idea that the new creators were simply implementing elements of their favorite parts of the original. I now think of it as an homage rather than a continuation. Plus, there were fun characters. I like the one girl who has the plant who turns creepy when it turns out the plant is a devious monster controlling her body, which also might be the plant. It felt in line with a mystery from season 1. I also liked the episode when Hidomi's headphones reprogram her brain to be extremely hyper and happy. Her faces were in the exaggerated anime styles I love. Part of it's also the nostalgia I have for Progressive, even though it was just 2018, where I remember the excitement I had leading up to it. I was hanging out with some friends I hadn't seen in a while at the time, and when we were going back to where we were staying before it started, I was like, hey, this anime's premiering I want to see, can we all watch it? And then I had us watch the first episode of Progressive live on Toonami at midnight, even though they had never seen the original. One thought it looked cool based on the episode, and the other one liked that the mom said tsundere. The point is, I have some sentimental attachment to when it aired. And wow, I was not expecting to have that much to say about Progressive. I even have more thoughts that I won't share for the sake of this entry's length. I guess I liked it more than I assumed. Since I don't want to double this entry's length, my quick thoughts on Alternative is it works better as a standalone anime if it removes all the fooly-cooly adjacent stuff and just rests on its own laurels. Seemed like a wholesome coming-of-age story for the protagonist and her friends. All but one of them gets their own episode for the first half of the season, and then the one that doesn't have a spotlight episode gets sucked up by a robot thing and angrily reveals that she never liked the main character and says the main character tries to help and only makes things worse, and I just don't like that turn of events for the season. I get that they're showing us that you can't always help people no matter how hard you try, but it felt undeserved for how nicely the main character is portrayed. I don't know, it soured my thoughts on the ending of that season. Like legitimately, the main character is such a nice person where I just can't see where the other one's coming from. All I'm thinking of is, shut up, what are you doing? And for the 2 additional seasons they released in 2023 that were 3 episodes each, I haven't seen them, so I can't comment on them yet, but if a newer Fooly Cooly needs to appear on another list of mine, maybe I'll finally watch them.
What the hell is a shoegaze?
Just another type of music like everything else in this series.
Really?
Yeah, here's the definition.
Ethereal swirling vocals with layers of distorted, bent, or flanged? I don't know what that word means.
Number 6, God, the Devil, and Bob. This is the last of the shows on the list that were cancelled, but had completed episodes that just never aired until Adult Swim. But the details of how it happened with this show are most interesting to me of the shows that were cancelled this way. If you look at Baby Blues or Mission Hill, they had the common thread of being on the WB in the early 2000s, cancelled before they were finished, and then appeared on Adult Swim about a year and a half later in 2002 when they were still pretty fresh. Same goes for The Oblongs, which was another WB cancelled alumni from around that time that appeared on Adult Swim that year. God, the Devil, and Bob, however, was an animated sitcom from 2000 that was on NBC, a network Adult Swim generally didn't license shows from, and it didn't get its unaired episodes released until over 10 years after its cancellation in 2011. The show was about a guy named Bob who was chosen by God to prove that humanity was worth saving, but Bob's kind of a jerk, so he's constantly on edge of learning to be a better person or saying screw it to all the world because it keeps screwing him over. Bob is such an everyman, and not the nicest everyman, which is what makes the concept of him being the guy so funny. Also, as the title implies, the devil is around, and he tries to steer Bob towards the screw it mindset. Both God and the devil are portrayed as pretty laid-back humans, with God kinda being a hippie. I like the art style of this show. It's got a caricature vibe to all these big heads, and I like the shading. I don't know, something about this show is soothing to me. It was picked up by NBC to air in early 2000. 13 episodes were produced, but a measly 4 episodes were aired, all in March of that year. According to an article by BBC News, NBC promised the show would be back on US TV in the fall, but they just never addressed it again, leaving 9 episodes unaired. I also like how the BBC article is like, well, we're airing the full series over here that Americans don't get. The distributors even released those 9 other episodes in the US on DVD, so technically you could watch all the episodes before Adult Swim if you decided to purchase a DVD set for a series that you might have seen 4 episodes of in the 2000s. Like in modern day, the rest of those episodes might have just been dumped on a streaming service, so this was a funny precursor to how that works now. Somehow, Adult Swim got the rights to air this in 2011, meaning this show that no one had likely thought of since 2000 was getting those remaining 9 episodes properly premiering on American TV. Adult Swim even aired the episodes out of production order to get the technically new episodes on first. They aired episode 1 the first week of January, and then immediately went to episode 5 the next week, just in case you were holding on to that memory of seeing the first 4 episodes a decade ago and demanded unseen content. It didn't matter since after episode 1 the plots don't have any continuity between episodes, but I find that detail funny. Once it finished, it reran on the network a bit, but disappeared after 2012, and since then, the broadcasting rights have expired. Just something about the acquisition of this show feels so random to me. How did Adult Swim find it? Did NBC strike a deal with them first? I doubt it. Or did someone on the Adult Swim team just like it? Why did it take 10 years for this show to be unearthed? Compared to their other acquired shows from the WB, this series had a poor showing, it seems. Those shows reran for about a decade, while this one rarely ever came back to the rotation. It's not a show I ever find myself coming back to, so I get it, but just all the details behind it make it intriguing enough to check up on every once in a while. Number 5, Family Guy. I don't think I need to give this one an introduction. It's Family Guy. If you haven't seen it, you've probably seen random clips of it on YouTube or social media, or just a meme. PETA, the horse is here. The first 3 seasons of it were on Fox, starting in 1999. It was cancelled once in the middle of those 3 seasons, then it was saved, but by the end of season 3, Fox put it down for good, or so they thought. Adult Swim got a lot of its syndicated programming from Fox, like American Dad, Bob's Burgers, etc., but Family Guy was one of the first and biggest breakout stars for them. Adult Swim started showing it in June 2003. It was no different when they acquired other shows, and they just ran it with normal advertising, but since there were 50 episodes at the time, they could run it on weeknights for a few months worth of rotating content. When it was on Fox, they switched around its time slot a lot, which caused its ratings not to be successful enough. So when Adult Swim kept it on at 11:30 every night, it could find an audience, a big audience. It was full of pop culture references from the 80s and 90s and classic sitcom cliches, so audiences loved it. Not only was it a smash hit for Adult Swim, but DVD sales for the existing season skyrocketed. Since this was before the age of streaming, that was your main way to get your Family Guy fix on demand. Fox saw the success now and was like, whoa, hold on, we own Family Guy, we're making more, and it hasn't stopped since. It came back to Fox in 2005 with new episodes, and I actually still really liked the 2 seasons right after it came back, seasons 4 and 5. I watched those episodes, and those jokes still hit for the most part. Some of them are pretty dated that work better if it was still 2005, but for the most part I enjoy them. The seasons after that are when the episodes start getting spotty if they're consistently good or not for me, and I haven't really kept up with the series in years outside of when a clip from a new episode goes viral, but I have heard it's improved from its low points.
I find that someone has to curate Family Guy clips for me because I don't have the attention span to watch Family Guy episode after episode.
And what has that curation taught you about modern Family Guy?
I have come to appreciate Chris Griffin more and more as the years have gone by. I don't know what that says about me, but it's still true. Like Brian and Stewie used to be my favorite, but now I think it's Chris.
The point is, Adult Swim turned a 3-season show that was supposedly done into an endless money machine for Fox, and Adult Swim continued their Family Guy deal, being able to air new episodes a few weeks after they premiered on Fox. I like how Adult Swim still advertised them as if they were new episodes for the first time on TV, but I think it was cool that they did this since the show did bring a lot of viewership over to the channel. Tragedy struck, though, when Disney started a deal to buy Fox at the end of 2017, so Adult Swim could no longer get new episodes and had to end their rerun cycles with episodes from 2017 until their contract ran out on September 18th, 2021. Like Adult Swim could still air episodes in that 4-year range, but it had to be episodes from before the Disney negotiations started. When the final day of that contract came, Adult Swim had a goodbye bumper for Family Guy, which was nice. Crying Peter Griffin holds so much power. Of course, Disney was going to go for exclusivity as soon as they could, but it did feel like a slap in the face taking Family Guy off the network that seemed to treat it the best, or at least helped revive it. So for however long Family Guy remains on the air, it truly owes it to Adult Swim. Number 4, Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex. This one is probably the most unique scenario on the list, and isn't quite a revival as it is more just Adult Swim helping out a series they thought was cool. Ghost in the Shell was a manga turned into an iconic anime movie in 1995. It's about the future where the world is more cyberized. Everyone has cybernetics now, whether it's just a few computer chips in your brain or your whole body is cyberized. However, everyone is said to still have a ghost, or essentially soul, in their cybernetic shell, which is where the title comes from. Besides having themes about what humanity truly is and the dangers and wonders of technology, the animation is awesome to see in motion. The movie has clearly influenced the sci-fi genre as a whole, with my biggest example probably being The Matrix. Ghost in the Shell made enough of a splash in '95 where it even made it to Siskel and Ebert's review show, and Ebert gave it a thumbs up. Siskel was ambiguous and I don't know what he gave it, but the influence of the movie and the manga having more storylines gave us a desire for more. The first TV series planned for Ghost in the Shell was called Standalone Complex. I'm not sure how, but Adult Swim somehow got to put their hand in the cookie jar for this project. The Ghost in the Shell movie never ran on Adult Swim to my knowledge, so I don't know what their ultimate motivation was for assisting with this. I can only assume that any of the parties involved approached one another, and there was mutual interest, since Adult Swim was one of the few companies that helped fund both seasons of Standalone Complex, and the animation studio for Standalone Complex was Adult Swim's usual anime studio, Production IG. The anime series had a good balance of plot and world building. Some episodes focus on the enemy at hand, while others act as one-off plot lines that wrap up in an episode, or have to do with the main plot but don't get anywhere. Like there's an episode where they go into the internet, which is a fun time capsule of what the early 2000s viewed future internet as. It feels very much like an old-fashioned forum, but it's like futuristic, and it should be a lot more crowded if this was the internet of today. Also, the Major has a nice outfit in this episode. Also, the Major as a main character is great. She's cold to an extent, but she feels human in how she talks to people. I like hearing the stories of her history, or when she just smiles, or when she's idling around and playing with her cybernetic hand, or just showing off her cybernetic body. And of course, the fight scenes are cool in this show.
This one's my favorite Ghost in the Shell. I think it's a good balance between the old and the new, and the theme songs are banging. I love the Tachikomas. They're really fun. They're fun and goofy. They're the robot guys. They like run around like spiders.
Would you want your own Tachikoma?
I don't think that they would fit without destroying everything.
Not if they're in figurine form.
Oh my god, that's adorable. Oh my god, is that a baby Major? Oh my god. That's a baby Major.
As I said, the Major is awesome.
Also, she's just like badass with no pants, and like that's how I want to live my life every day.
And you mentioned earlier that Standalone Complex is your favorite of the Ghost in the Shells. Does that mean you've kept up with all the other Ghost in the Shells?
There are so many Ghost in the Shell movies now. I don't like their animation. It's weird.
What about that newer CG one?
I saw that. I do like it.
What about the live action one?
I did have to see it because I have to.
The first season aired as a part of the Saturday Night Anime block starting in November 2004, going weekly until it finished. Then Season 2, called The Second Gig, ran with the same schedule starting in November 2005. My favorite detail from this season was one of the episodes fell on the tail end of April Fool's Day, so Adult Swim just aired it but with fart noises the whole time, and then they aired it an hour later when it was technically April 2nd without the added sound effects. After the series finished, it was a mainstay of Adult Swim lineups throughout the years. Whenever they needed an anime to fill a time slot, Ghost in the Shell was there to cover. I used to be confused why it was one of the few anime that outlasted nearly every other anime shown on the network in the mid-2000s, usually contracts expired, but then I learned about how they funded it, and it made sense. Thanks to Adult Swim contributing to the funding of it, they own it, so they can do whatever they want with it, which is why the entire series is still viewable on their website for free. This makes me very happy. Even though they're not the full rights owners, they use their power of partial ownership to make it easily accessible for future generations to experience, just as we did at 12:30 and or 3:30 a.m. in 2005. Number 3, Futurama. This is a similar scenario to Family Guy. It lasted 4 seasons on Fox starting in 1999, got swapped around on the lineup when Fox was getting tired of it, ran on Adult Swim after that, and then it got revived later. Futurama is another show I feel needs no introduction. It's a sci-fi and sometimes surreal comedy that takes place in the future with a guy from our time who is cryogenically frozen for 1,000 years. If you haven't seen it, you've probably seen clips on social media or the various memes. It's a very character-driven show where you have the main crew, but then you have all the side characters that find their way into plenty of plot lines. It's a pick-your-favorite scenario. My favorite is Lur, ruler of Omicron Persei 8. Futurama was showing its last season on Fox when it was picked up by Adult Swim for January 2003. Adult Swim treated it wonderfully, showing it at the start of nearly every night at 11 p.m. and sometimes giving it marathons. Even when it was Saturday, which was usually dedicated to anime, I feel Futurama was always in that initial spot, which was great for its exposure. As mentioned, when it was en route to being cancelled by Fox, they swapped its time slots, sabotaging its ratings, so Adult Swim made it easy for it to get an audience on its network. Since the Futurama crew was informed when they were being cancelled, they were able to do a send-off episode that was very open-ended for more, but still worked as a series finale. With Family Guy getting revived after its boom on Adult Swim, it seemed that this was the end for Futurama since it had the same rating success on Adult Swim, but no immediate renewal. Finally, though, in 2007, it was announced Futurama would be getting 4 direct-to-DVD movies to test the waters for a revival. They were released over time with success, and combined with the Adult Swim success, it was enough for 20th Century Fox to commission new seasons of Futurama on Comedy Central. But with Comedy Central being the new home for Futurama, Adult Swim lost the rights, so at the end of 2007, they had their last Futurama marathon as a send-off. It was tongue-in-cheek about how often Futurama was a time slot filler for them, but it also felt like a teary goodbye since it seemed like it would run on the network forever. It ran on Comedy Central for a few seasons before getting cancelled again, this time with a proper finale, and then it was revived on Hulu later, and it seems like it's going to just kind of keep on going forever. Surprisingly though, in 2022, after Disney acquired Fox, Futurama came back to Adult Swim and aired the DVD and Comedy Central seasons, along with the classic reruns. It's nice that they got it back for a bit, especially after losing Family Guy. It felt like a homecoming. As for the revived seasons, I don't know, I'm not the biggest fan of them. Some of the episodes are really funny, like the Leonardo da Vinci or Nanobot episode, and the one with Fry's mom actually makes me tear up. If there was a list about serious Futurama episodes, which there's totally enough to make, that would be in my top 5. But as for a majority of the episodes, they didn't hit as hard to me as the original 4 seasons. I think the outdated episode about going viral on the internet did it for me, since I have a pet peeve about internet fame plotlines that don't use a realistic social media algorithm, and I admit that's just me. And I haven't seen the Hulu season yet, so I can't speak for that era of the revival.
I don't think they needed more episodes. It was okay ending with Satan, the devil one.
Robot Devil.
I was okay with it ending with the Robot Devil. That was a really good episode. That's one of my favorite episodes.
And don't take our Futurama critique to heart. I'm happy they're still making more for the people who have been enjoying it consistently. My stance is really, I have no strong feelings one way or the other. I'm just happy Adult Swim gave Futurama the red carpet treatment. Those original seasons deserve high praise, and Adult Swim made sure we'd never miss an episode. Number 2, Samurai Jack. This one is also a different case from the other entries, since Samurai Jack was a show on Cartoon Network in 2001, so it was conceptually easy to get it revived on the same network. But Adult Swim freed it of its restrictions that it had being on the kid-friendly part of the station. Plus, it was a prolific return for a series that deserved a proper ending. If you need a summary of pre-Adult Swim Samurai Jack, here it is. Long ago in a distant land, this guy, Aku, the shape-shifting master of darkness, unleashed an unspeakable evil, but a foolish samurai warrior wielding a magic sword stepped forth to oppose. Before the final blow was struck, Aku threw open a portal in time and flung him into the future where his evil was strong. Now the fool seeks to return to the past and undo the future that is Aku. After the first few episodes, each episode is pretty much self-contained. Outside of a few characters that later return, you could watch episodes in any order, not that I'd recommend doing that. Even episodes where Jack fights or encounters Aku are more meant for world building and end with Aku fleeing. However, it was cancelled after the 4th season in 2004, meaning we never saw Jack get back to the past. That's like Gilligan's Island ending without them getting off the island. I feel like if Cartoon Network gave Genndy Tartakovsky, the series creator, a heads up, he would have written the ending instead of doing all those funny side quest episodes in season 4. For years, fans speculated if we'd get any sort of follow-up, a movie, another season, something. It basically seemed like this would just be a series to revisit for Jack's episodic adventures and not closure. However, in 2015, season 5 was teased and it finally came out in 2017, which made sense. Genndy was a consistent creator on the network, making Dexter's Lab, the Clone Wars series, Symbiotic Titan, which also never got its ending, please don't just make it a tax write-off, Cartoon Network, and he was making Primal at the time, so giving him a budget to end one of his older projects felt deserved. Season 5 consisted of 10 episodes that took place 50 years in the future of the future, but Jack could not age due to the effects of the time portal, and he's lost his sword. As you would expect, this season has a serialized plot that builds up to Jack getting his sword back and a sense of hope, along with a new enemy, the Daughters of Aku, and a final confrontation with Aku himself.
He was so much more emotional in this season. He experienced all of the feelings, love and loss and longing, and all of the hairstyles.
What about other words that start with L?
Liberty, longevity, life. What L were you thinking of?
Oh, none of them. The first 3 examples you gave just started with L, so I wanted to see how long you could keep it going. Still, the season manages to get that feel of the episodic adventures with the way Jack encounters one-off enemies, like the fight against alien leeches, or getting swallowed by a giant thing, or Scaramouche, the musical Tom Kenny robot. All the while they can now show blood and say naughty words since they're on Adult Swim. My main complaint is the season feels like it should have been a bit longer, maybe just 2 more episodes, or increase the length of the episodes. The 2 major things that felt rushed were the fight against the leader of the Daughters of Aku and the final battle itself. For the leader, she had a build-up like she'd be a final boss, but then she just appears from behind a rock and is like, "Ha, I've been following you this whole time." I didn't actually think that would be her only fight, and she'd last more than half an episode. And for the final battle, it's a cool team-up where many of the people Jack helped on his journey return, but it needed way more than the 10 minutes it could squeeze into. That last episode had to have the big fight, the closure, and the finale all in 22 minutes. I heard rumors that the last episode was supposed to be for an hour time slot, but that was revoked, though I couldn't tell if that was true or just wishful thinking. And I don't blame the creators for this, it was probably the network and budgeting restraints. Also, when we watched the finale around the time it came out, as soon as the sad part of the last episode came, Judgment Meter wasting no time said, "I hate this ending," so sternly and abruptly.
I remember. I hate this ending.
In the end, I'm very happy and grateful that we got this season, and I enjoyed looking back at random episodes from the first 4 seasons. It's Samurai Jack. It looks great, it's always gonna look great, and it's great that Genndy Tartakovsky keeps on getting to work on new shows. For number 1, we went with the most mellow show, a program that doesn't really make a splash of being in your face, but it just chilled out as being a quiet hit on Adult Swim for a few years. Plus, Adult Swim saved this show from being obscure and cancelled before finishing a season to a respectable 4-season run. Number 1, Home Movies. Home Movies is one of those shows that feels perfectly made for its target audience, but I also understand why it's not the cup of tea for those outside of its target audience. It's dry humor, it can be slow, it's crudely drawn, but I love it. Though I'm surprised it even made it to mainstream TV first for how slow it felt. Certainly not your standard sitcom on network television in the late 90s. The series premiered on UPN in April 1999. UPN as a station I tend to forget about nowadays, but I like the variety of sitcoms and other shows it had, if anything for the obscurity. There's a Love Boat sequel series on this network. UPN was the other network that combined with the WB to form the CW in 2006, so that's where it went. But this is about Home Movies, not the history of UPN. Home Movies' first season was about a kid, Brendan Small, making amateur movies with his friends and just having normal day-to-day activities and conversations with people, along with his mother getting back on the dating scene and working her job, and his soccer coach giving advice which isn't always bad but usually irrelevant. The season was mostly unscripted, being animated to fit improvised conversations, and giving those conversations new context, like a Space Ghost interview. Like the first conversation of the show was the coach telling Brendan how he got a cow tattoo and regretted it, and it makes you wonder how the conversation got to that point. The coach is like the best character in this show. It's just H. John Benjamin doing his deadpan shtick. And the art style is very fun. It's not clean, it's simplistic, I love it. The lines are also boiled, so character outlines are constantly squiggling, something like Dr. Katz or Ed, Edd and Eddy. So as I said, it premiered on UPN, and it had the lowest ratings of any series premiere on the network, and the network told the Home Movies crew that had to have been demoralizing. UPN was nice enough to give it a few more shots after that, but after 5 episodes, it was canceled. One person who thought it was smart humor that shouldn't be wasted, though, was Cartoon Network's vice president at the time. So she got the rights from UPN, reopened the first season, and gave it a second. Home Movies premiered on the first ever Adult Swim lineup at 10 p.m. in September 2001, and once again, Adult Swim did that thing where they start the series with the canceled episodes first, and then they run the episodes that were on TV in the following weeks. So episode 6 was the premiere. You can tell, especially with season 2, they did not want to squander this second chance, and they picked up the pace with the humor. It still had that unscripted feel, but the jokes were snappier with more scripting and more takes involved. The animation was also more solid, getting rid of the squiggling lines. It was animated in Flash and colored more brightly, since apparently some viewers complained about the animation in the first season. I liked it, but I guess I get it. Even though I love the unscripted method of season 1, they still managed to make those conversations feel natural in the other seasons. The dialogue is so good. It has that Abbott and Costello vibe of finding words with double meanings and rolling with it. I get that they would really have to plan this out and they can't always improvise jokes like that.
I always had fun watching home movies, and I'm not talking about my own, but shh.
Do you have a favorite character?
Ooh, I like the main character and the mom. Oh, but I also like that kid.
That kid could mean any of them.
The orange kid. Oh, but I also like the coach. It's really hard. These characters are really good. I like it because it's just like everyday life, people doing things, but in my style of humor. And it always looks like they're wearing jammies.
Before season 4 came around, the creators were informed that this would be their last season on Adult Swim and they'd be canceled, but they still got to produce the whole season and gave the series a nice ending. That season was more about the movies part of Home Movies and focused more on Brendan and friends producing their versions of existing movies more often, which was a nice way to lead into the series' end, since I almost forgot the main premise was Brendan being an aspiring filmmaker behind all the funny jokes. So in the end, it ran new episodes from 2001 to 2004 on Adult Swim, 52 episodes, which is amazing considering it was going to be done after 5. The series felt tailor-made for Adult Swim. It was experimental and focused on the humor in the everyday conversations of life, which I feel was influential to later shows they produced, like the simplicity of 12-Ounce Mouse, or when characters talk normally for a few seconds and smiling friends. And don't think I forgot about that Cartoon Network influence when Clarence had Brendan Small in an actual episode. I never would have guessed Home Movies was made for another network, so I'm happy Adult Swim adopted it as their own. It doesn't get reran much now, but if you get an opportunity to watch it, it's a chill show to have on whether you want to focus on it or just have it on in the background. And it's also perfect for the number 1 on this list. Now, what did you think? Were all these shows worthy of some praise after their revival, or should Adult Swim have left them where they were? And what are some of your favorite shows that Adult Swim brought back, whether we discussed them or not? Let us know in the comments. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and we will see you in the next video.